next discussion is a focus on residential school tourism experiences. Indigenous tourism is a vital path to reconciliation. More than ever, both domestic and international travelers genuinely have the willingness to learn and understand the true history of Canada. Several tourism experiences include residential school tours and stories, and our next panel is going to tell you about their experience. I'd like to welcome to the stage our moderator, Cecilia Point. And joining her is Luke Wassegijig from Wikwamong Tourism, Greg Hopf from Moccasin Trails, Dr. Terry Lusty, a residential school survivor, and Dennis Meeches from the National Residential School Museum. Welcome to the stage.
Are we expecting one more, or? Oh, here he comes. Morning or afternoon. Did you have fun last night? Good afternoon, everyone. Anta Cecilia Point, Talitanatwa Hamasquiam. Natsamat Tisqualawin, we're all of one heart and one mind today. So today we're going to learn how Indigenous experiences contribute to reconciliation. When we invite visitors from near and far to understand experiences of ours that we've faced for the past many centuries, particularly since the 1800s up until 1996, and the crisis that continues today. So we hope that by listening to survivors and honoring those who have passed, you can support our decolonization efforts, and together we can work to build a better future for our peoples. So, like the first thing that occurs to me is that we do have experts who you can buy their services and their time. They are willing to share their stories and teach you our history and the history that was thrust upon us. So when what we all call when the 215 were discovered in Kamloops, the first thing that I did was phone my son's school and say, make sure nobody goes and asks my son and peppers him with questions about what just happened, because that would be too traumatic for him. And it was another lesson for me in how I try to help friends of other cultures, because, you know, when George Floyd happened after that, I understood. And so, you know, to my black friends, I would just send them a message, look, holding you up today, girl, whatever you need from me. Like, I'm not gonna go and ask you about all your experiences or anyone in your family. It's just that time to let it sit with the person who's traumatized. So, so that's what these guys are here for today. Greg, your business, Moccasin Trails, operates in the Okanagan near the Kamloops Residential School. So following the findings, what changed for Moccasin Trails?
My whole world. The news broke on a Friday, and so Saturday we were called right to Kamloops. And my business partner and I, Frank Antoine, we were leading sharing circles, we were talking, we were just lending ourselves any way we can. So it changed. So basically we just dropped everything. We dropped everything, we went straight to Kamloops. From my house to Kamloops is about a 2-hour drive, and I was in Kamloops for 5 days straight, from Saturday right till Wednesday, leading sharing circles, talking, smudging, just being around. It was pretty heavy. And I do, you touched on it a little bit, Cecile, but I do want to just share one real quick story. And when the news broke on Friday, so Saturday I'm in Kamloops. Sunday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, I get a phone call from one of my friends. And this is a very white, privileged family, right? Lives in Kelowna, house on the lake, multi-millionaire. Him and his wife have 3 kids. Very privileged, and he'll even be the first one to say that. 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone rings. It's his wife. Her name is Shannon. And I'll never forget the phone call. She's like, Greg, I can't sleep. I am sick to my stomach. My skin is crawling. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with myself. You're the first one I thought of to reach out. I need to talk to you. Help me understand. So I talked with her. I talked with her for about 3 hours. And I had said, in order to understand, there is our report out there. And I don't expect everyone to read the 500-page report, but there's an executive summary. And I said, read that. Read that and read all of the recommendations, and then phone me back. She phoned me back and she says, I get it now. Thank you so much for teaching me. So I love telling that story because we're just changing, right? We're changing that way of thinking, so.
Well, that leads me to my next question for you. So beyond your land-based tours, you and Frank have done a lot of work training non-Indigenous professionals as part of your business. So how can partners support their paths to reconciliation personally, professionally, and organizationally?
Yeah, just get involved. I always tell our non-Indigenous partners, our non-Indigenous businesses, don't be scared. Right? Kamloops is a big example. It is Western Canada's largest powwow. They put through over 150, 200,000 people in the gate over the weekend. Thousands of dancers from Canada and the USA. But the non-Indigenous think, what's going on over there? I don't want to go down there. Like, what are they doing? Right? They're scared. And so we always encourage our non-Indigenous friends, don't be scared. You need to come. You need to celebrate with us. And I've said it many, many times, not just powwows, right? Our communities love celebrating. We have winter solstice, we have spring solstice, we celebrate the seasons. We love celebrating in our communities. And they're not closed events, they're opened events. You need to come. You need to come to our communities. What do you do on June 21st? Wherever you live, the municipality you live, I guarantee you that Indigenous nation you share your municipality with, they're celebrating. Go. Celebrate with them. September 30th, what are you doing? Go. Celebrate. We love celebrating. You need to come to our communities. Don't be scared. We don't bite. So just come and just come and be engaged. Don't be scared.
Awesome. Dennis, your work has led you to chairing the board for the National Residential School Museum. What conversations are you having at the community level to prepare for guests who are interested in learning more about residential schools?
Miigwech, Cecilia, thank you very much. So we acquired the property in 1981 through an acknowledgement of Treaty 1, a treaty, that the land claim, treaty land entitlement. And one of our knowledge keepers, who's since passed on, had recommended that we should turn the residential school, the Portage Industrial Residential School, into a museum. Mm-hmm. And I thought, working with our councils, that this would be a great testament to the resilience of our people to raise awareness of the residential school era, which is a fairly dark chapter in our history. And of course, there's a lot of discussions around that at the local level. Many were opposed to that, the thought of that also too, for obvious reasons. But it's really important history, something that our children, our grandchildren need to understand. But not only within our Indigenous communities, right across Canada and globally. Sometimes it makes me wonder, of course, colonialism and the damaging effect that it had on our people. We've, been able to walk through that journey, and not without its challenges, of course. We've been involved quite diligently to raise that awareness. I do have Lorraine Daniels here, who's been very instrumental in the museum work. She's the director. Linda Daniels, our knowledge keeper, she's also here. She attended the apology in Rome. So I think, for us, there's a lot of work. We hope to honor, all of the, right across the country, just have a history, residential school, exhibits, library, memorial gardens. So all that work is being undertaken now. And I do encourage you to attend the Residential School Museum. I think many of you have already been there. It's just an hour down, right off the Trans-Canada. It's a beautiful location. As a child, I walked through that building. It was abandoned at one point. And just really never thought about what happened here as a child walking through an abandoned, big old abandoned building like that. But for me, I really believe it's destiny in many ways for us, for Long Plain, to acquire that property through our treaty land entitlement, to show the world the history of residential schools. I think, and I do need to acknowledge Manitoba, Tourism Manitoba, Indigenous Tourism Manitoba for supporting the work that we're doing. And there's a lot of great companies, non-Indigenous companies that are also supporting the work that we're doing there, such as Canada Life. So there's a lot of work. We hope to turn it into a world-class residential school museum for not only for Long Plain, but for the world community.
And so the mandate of the museum is, in quotes, from a place of hurting to a place of healing. Can you reflect on what that means to you? Yes,
of course we all have. Fortunately, I didn't attend residential schools, but my older sibling did, and my parents, my grandparents, and we've heard horrific stories that have come from that, including my mother, who attended that particular residential school. So just understanding what happened there, and then being able to share that with my children, grandchildren, being a place. When I'm there, I feel at peace. I really believe it's a sacred area, and I believe that the work we're doing there, the acknowledgements, the memorials, to me, we're changing the place from a dark place to a place of light, so people can really appreciate and understand the true history. And some time ago, the museum here in the city, the Asper Foundation, they had discussed the museum component in their museum, and I was somewhat a little bit concerned by that, because I really wanted Indigenous people to really be to see through the eyes of Indigenous people, right? So to be able to hear from our survivors, our knowledge keepers on the work that needs to get done. So, but I'm hoping, I think now with the reconciliation, that we would be able to work in partnership with not only the Human Rights Museum, but museums across the country and across the globe.
Awesome. So Luke, similarly, your experience is literally within the walls of a former residential school and focuses on creating space for dialogue with guests about residential school. What are visitors seeking to understand, do you think?
I think a lot of the visitors that are coming to our community, they're seeking an understanding. A lot of the visitors that in this time of reconciliation, we're finding that they're coming for that genuine understanding. And what we're able to do as an organization, as a community, we're able to provide that understanding. We do that through history, through interpretive tours. But for us, it's more of changing that colonial narrative. We have one of the first residential schools in the Great Lakes. It's a very powerful place. And the stories that are involved, that are in those walls are powerful. Those stones that were brought to make that school were brought in by canoe and Mackinaw boat, by men, women, and children. So what we're doing is we're creating that story of understanding. We're bridging that gap. And we do it in a way that's truthful, and it's a way that shares our true history, but it allows them to really grasp that understanding of who we are as Anishinaabe people. The experience that we do, it's called the unceded journey. It really goes through a historical timeline from pre-colonial, contact. What are our governance systems? Because really, to get a real, genuine understanding and real, true reconciliation, it starts with understanding. It starts with knowing the history. It starts with knowing that pre-colonial history. Like Justice Sinclair said yesterday, there's an understanding to our governance systems, right? And we teach that. We teach about those clan systems and their roles in that pre-colonial area. We teach about the treaty relationships and why we currently are here. And then we teach about the Jesuit contact and that role. The Jesuits have been in our community since 1648, right? When Samuel de Champlain was making his trip across the country, one of the stops was in our area. So one of the first places that the Jesuits made contact was in Wequemcom. So we teach that. And there's a long-standing, relationship there. But what we also try to do is teach our visitors about the other things, about the multi-generational trauma, and all of those things that come with that, and the stigma that comes with that. We try to break down those barriers and break down those stereotypes.
And so how do you support frontline workers in your business as they share their difficult stories? Do you have supports and training in place to make sure they aren't leaving work with heavy feelings?
This has been something that's been so new. It's been in this era of reconciliation. This is something that I haven't seen before in terms of the impacts that it has on our cultural guides. When we opened up after COVID, we were delivering a lot of tours, and a lot of it was our reconciliation programs, our unceded journey, the heavy content. One of our guides is a 60s scoop survivor, right? So during the pandemic, when we opened up, and I think the first time we were able to operate a tour again was in 2021. And it was our busiest time, but we were constantly delivering this one experience, which was the unceded journey experience. And the guides had come to me halfway through the season, and they said, we need a break. This is too powerful. The stuff, the messaging that we're putting out there, it's just too powerful. So we had to stop, and we had to do that 2 years in a row. But what that allowed me to do was, as an operator, of course, we have to find that balance between, generating revenue and retaining employees and keeping happy employees. So it was new to me. So what we now do is we offer ceremony for our guides. And we did it mid-season. We had a shutdown in the busiest part of the season, and had a shutdown and allowed our guides to recoup and get back and take a breath and debrief. But moving forward in our cultural guide program, 2.0, what we're going to be able to do is allow them to have mental health supports, right? Part of that, and we noticed that, part of that mental health first aid, so you could understand what are those things that trigger you and how do you respond to those, are very important. But I think, again, the other part of that is that cultural balance. Identity is such a big part of who we are. So, it's so intricately weaved in who we are, so we need to make sure that we carry that balance for our guides.
Dr. Terry, as an elder and a survivor, what does our Indigenous tourism industry need to consider when sharing residential stories?
Well, the one thing is a lot of people, when they're approaching people in our communities for stories, information, they want to take pictures, whatever, they have to be aware of the protocols involved, especially always, always. Protocols are very, very necessary component in the transition of information back and forth. And it's a delicate balance sometimes with certain topic areas. There are some things you can carry forward, some you can't, you know. So always seek permission of the individual involved. You know, especially like, for example, sometimes visitors will come jump into a circle. And there are different kinds of circles with different kinds of protocols. And what's said in the circle stays in the circle. It doesn't go out there. So people can't, they have to know that they can't go and pass on information if somebody asks them, oh, what'd they say? What'd you do in the circle? You know, that's a no-no. And the same thing like respect is always a big part. They have to show respect for those being interviewed, those who are doing the storytelling, and have patience with these individuals. Because sometimes people struggle from within. They're still dealing. You know, every time you tell your story, if it's a residential school story, you're reliving your own experience. And sometimes you hesitate, you're grasping at things, you're trying to catch your breath, you're trying to catch your mental anguish and put it back in balance. And it's not always an easy going. So people have to respect that, back off, and, you know, don't interrupt or interfere with what that person is, you know, what they're delivering. It's a hard road for some of the young people because they don't have that experience of working in that capacity, you know. So just, you know, be patient, exercise respect and privileges and so forth. And be truthful. When you're in that circle, or even if you're not in the circle, always be truthful. Because if not, it'll come around and it will bite you, you know. You've got to be a good person. And particularly if you're, you know, someone who is supposed to be a ceremonialist or a sacred individual, you've got to observe those. Well, those people know that, you know, but there's a lot of people out there that do not, and they need to be introduced properly beforehand. So a lot of times when we have public functions or events, people from media, etc., have to be told. I remember one time standing in front of a photographer, and I'm a photographer, so I have respect for other photographers. But this one, he was bound and determined to get a shot of a religious leader doing ceremony, doing prayer. And he was going to be there with his camera shooting away at will. And I just stood there like this in front of him, blocking his passage. But, you know, I didn't like to do it, but it was a last resort. So please, exercise respect.
Yeah, Hopf. I think that's a lot of what these guys are saying too, that you need to follow your own protocols and your own culture and look after yourself and don't share something you're not permitted to or not allowed to, and lots of respect for us when people come into our spaces. So how do you think, Dr. Terry, we uplift our future generations to carry on these stories and ensure the focus on reconciliation is not lost?
Yeah, I'm glad that question was raised, because it's a very serious thing. I'm a teacher in different ways, traditionally and professionally as an educator. I'm a former school teacher in northern Alberta, up in the remote fly-in community of Fort Chipewyan, and also Wassegijig. And one thing I always encourage my students or people at conferences and gatherings, meetings, is to document things and really get on that track. Encourage others to pick up the pen, to pick up the microphone, and start documenting the culture, the history, all this stuff, get it down, and get it from our own perspective. You know, we've got a lot of people who are capable and don't realize it, and they're not doing anything with that knowledge that they have or that skill, you know, and we need more of those people stepping forward and helping to preserve and project the culture and the history down the road in whatever format, whether it's films, whether it's theater. You know, there's many, many different forms it can take to transfer and to keep that alive. You know, that was why when we were put into residential school, that's why some of these sacred stories and so on were kept intact. They didn't disappear, they just went underground, you know. And now some of them are coming back, but what's out there has to be, the momentum has to still carry forward through the generations. And because the ones who are going to carry it forward are the ones who are young today. So we have to be sure to do our duty to educate them as to the culture and the history so that they can pass it on, you know. And it has to go one after the other, but you got to set the example first. So we need, but there's a lot of non-native people writing about our culture and our history, and it's not always accurate, which is why, again, and they come from a different perspective than we do. Yes. And that's why it's so important for our own people to be doing that kind of work. It's really, really important.
Well, and that kind of leads to my next question. So for those of you that are giving tours, and anyone can answer this, so for our non-Indigenous partners in the room, and they could be travelers themselves, or they could be marketers, travel trade, or media, how can they best support themselves, their teams, or their clients in this commitment to reconciliation?
Boy, that's a good one.
Anyone?
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to let people know that in 2005, our residential school was declared a provincial heritage site, and a few years back it was declared a national historic site. Again, our board of directors, our staff are working towards creating a lot of partnerships, and of course a lot of that has to do with there's a big fundraising effort that's ongoing. As a matter of fact, on Saturday night we have a fundraiser at the Windham Garden, the Long Plain Madison Reserve. So if you're still around and you're able to attend, I encourage you to come. I think reconciliation is so important, and we've been blessed with a beautiful urban reserve in the city of Portage, right off the Trans-Canada, centrally located right across the country. I think we're getting a lot of people, organizations, and governments that are willing to work with us to develop the museum. It'll take some time. Of course, it's going to take quite a bit of capital dollars to work towards completing the project. We're talking millions of dollars, so it's a work in progress. But I think, you know, when I look at our community Long Plain and Kishkimakwa Reserve, our people are committed. They know what needs to get done. They know it's a real important part of our spiritual journey, our healing journey. And our young children and grandchildren that are coming up, they need to understand that history, because a lot of times that was absent, and history has been distorted throughout the years, and we just need to correct that. A lot of that that has been, you know, people that have been misinformed on what happened in our First Nation communities. So yeah, I do. I think I'm very hopeful. Of course, I'm always an internal optimist and working towards partnerships, and I do need to again thank ITAC, Keith and his team for a great gathering here. It's really important to bring people together, and I look forward to, along with our board and the Chief and Council of Long Plain, to hosting people. We have an annual event every year, September 30th, ongoing events that happen at the museum. So please come and visit us, and you'll truly understand what we mean by a place of hurting to a place of healing. Miigwech kinako nimakana.
We want our non-Indigenous visitors or guests, we want them to come with an open heart. We want them to come with an open mind. We want you to be engaged. Be in the moment. Ask questions. You think about it, our survivors are they're reliving trauma in front of you. That's a big deal. When you're sitting, for us in Kamloops, we have our stories, our experience in a winter pit home, in a kwatsi, in a kukuli, we call it. And this is where survivors and guests are just sitting and listening to our survivors. And it gets very, very heavy, just almost what we experienced here. And we want our non-Indigenous to just be in the moment, have an open heart, have an open mind, just be in the moment, because we can't screw this up. So.
Hello. I think, you know, yesterday, Justice Sinclair said it the best, you know, industry, you know, and society in general needs to stop looking at First Nations as inferior. And we see it all the time, you know, and I can see it from when we meet journalists, when we meet industry. We look in their eyes, we can see, you know, we can read between the lines. And I'm glad he said it yesterday, that you know, come in with a blank page. Come with a blank page. Get those notions and those stereotypes, leave them at the door. I'm proud to be Anishinaabe. But it definitely starts with is come in with a clean slate, you know. Let's change the narrative. You guys, all of you, can help do that. And partnerships with ITAC to help send that message and to help bring that message to travel trade, to, you know, to industry, so that we can do our job better on the ground and provide that language so that, you know, that inferiority, that those stereotypes are left at the door. Miigwech.
Awesome. And Dr. Terry, we are out of time, but you are our elder. I would be remiss if I didn't let you close us with some good words.
I'll just make this very brief because we are at the end. But one thing I would like to say in dealing with media, because I've been doing it for many, many years as a photojournalist, a lot of media people really, really need a slap once in a while. They do. I kid you not. Some of them are so damn ignorant, you know, it's mind-boggling sometimes. But one thing that I do is when I go to a lot of functions where outside media come into the picture, a lot of times I walk up to them and I ask them straight to their face if they know what they're doing, what they're walking into, you know, because you got to know that first.
Yes.
And whether they have any prior, you know, experience in that area of dealing with our people and our communities. And if they don't, a lot of times I will nicely explain to them some of the values, and ethics, and protocols that they need to be cognizant of and follow to the T, you know, and also tell them, hey, if you're not sure of what you're doing or what you're walking into, ask somebody who will know.
Yes.
These meetings and what have you, there's always people out there, staff members, volunteers, security people, whatever. Go and approach them, the organizers, and ask them. And sometimes you need to ask them permission. You don't want to walk into somebody putting flags up on a tree and just at will go taking shots of that,
Yes.
you know? I did that one time to one reporter, and this was one of our own people, but it was a young journalist who didn't know better, and I had to put her in her place, you know? But I tried to do it in, you know, nice way, like, you know, like that.
Yeah.
But she got all ticked off and went and put me on report to her, to her director of the organization that she was working with. But I didn't care, you know, in a way, because I did what I could to help her. And if she doesn't want to listen to me or to somebody else that knows the situation, well, you're going to have trouble all the way, young lady,
That's right.
you know. So, yeah, be kind with those people and explain to them, you know, the routines that they need to be aware of and follow. Yeah.
Hajkasiem. So many Hajkas, Elder Terry. I bow lower, pray for you every day and all the survivors, and raise my hands to UCMs for the hard work you're doing. I know it's really difficult, so we'll try and lift you up in our prayers at sunrise as well. UCM.